Hello and welcome. My name is Rhiannon Turner and this is my practitioner inquiry undertaken at primary school in West Lothian between October 2021 and June 2022. The line of inquiry sought to explore independent language learning in a second level class. So why did I choose to do this? Previously, I've undertaken inquiries as a PGDE student, and this is where I began exploring the modern languages curriculum. I've used a no-context strategy to embed Makaton as a visual aid to learning and transitions in a primary 2 classroom, which was very successful. In 4 weeks, I was able to facilitate non-verbal communication with pupils, encourage EAL students to engage with me, and I was able to link this new skill into previous health and well-being learning through stories and play. The children were inquisitive or accepting of my signing at first, and within a few weeks, a majority were repeating signs back to me or were able to respond to them when they were given them non-verbally. And in a P5-4 classroom, I explore predictable routines and digital media as valuable assets in increasing confidence across reading, writing, listening, and especially speaking. The children interacted with sites that I created, such as the Google site and a Thing link. We used Duolingo during laptop time, and we also used opening and closing songs to separate French from the other parts of the day, so they felt that they were getting into the swing of speaking in a different language and then bringing themselves back out again. And then we were able to use child-led integration of French throughout the day, so asking to go to the toilet or choosing their lunch in the morning, but this was always the child's choice every day. Some children were happy to do French all the time, some would do it some days and some other days, and some kids were definitely not feeling confident enough to do at that time, and that was okay. We also used some bilingual stories to increase exposure to reading and hearing the target language. So in the current class context, I have a P5-6 class who were very vocal early on about their dislike of modern languages. So my class and I were at an impasse. They were not very interested in French, and I had very little knowledge in Spanish nor any confidence in doing a crash course in order to teach them in a very short space of time. So we held a curriculum conference, which is a slotting class where I discuss curriculum design with my pupils in order to co-create as much as possible, seeing as they are at second level and take quite a good interest in the way that they are taught. And we came up with our own solution, which was simple, and it was just that the children wanted more choice. So, preliminary research into language learning found that this is not a widely researched subject, or perhaps it's considered an area that doesn't require further research, or it may be that it is considered quite niche, but the consensus is that there are many, many benefits to learning multiple languages. So Tierney and Galstegi spoke to a focus group of primary 6 and 7 pupils about their attitudes to language learning, and they found that a positive perception and high motivation to learn a language in the first place is governed by several factors. For example, the course. Does their motivation come from receiving good marks? Is the content fun or stimulating in the first place? Is their teacher motivated through learning the language? Does their teaching style gel well with the pupils' learning styles? Do the pupils want to please or connect with their teacher through this shared language? And it can also be group specific. Is there a group dynamic that is supportive and encouraging within the classroom or out within a wider learning community? The motivation also draws on perceived relevance. Does this language have a high currency value for the learner? Is it spoken at home, in the family? Is there a holiday destination that they go to a lot? Are they thinking of their future career prospects? And is a foreign modern language needed in order for them to get the career that they want? They also found that language perception was very much gendered. More girls than boys that they spoke to had higher motivation or positive attitude to learning a target language overall across primary 6 and 7, but motivation was higher overall in the P6s when the language was new and exciting rather than P7 when the novelty had sort of worn off or the learning stepped up and became a bit more difficult. Children all agreed that they felt that all areas of their target language were tricky in some capacity. Usually it was pronunciation or the fear of pronouncing something wrong. Reading, spelling, and a different grammar structure were the most common listed challenges that the children found. So from this, I looked to some further reading that was aiming to look at the influence of a curriculum that offers both the high currency value for the language, that motivates the learners, and offers a good group dynamic. So Kroald was able to use Henriot's theory of play when constructing a French curriculum in a Norwegian school, and she created a hybrid of a video game and a news blog as the playful context and structure for the learning system. and then place the students in groups with a common goal, which allowed them to enter that playful frame and engage in that autonomous learning. And her paper shows that she had a very, very successful class full of highly engaged learners. While she arguably lacked playful objects in that they were digital applications and not physical, tangible objects that O'Neill would speak about in his theory of play, Little also did a European language portfolio project which spanned several countries across the globe between 2007 and 2011, which very much used playful objects and gave schools freedom to design their curriculum to meet the needs that they had across a common goal of globalization and the celebration of individual cultures and languages within a multicultural society. And finally, Henry's theory of cross-linguistic awareness was a consideration for my own curriculum development, as I had many children who spoke a second language in the home, and the ability to link English and an at-home language with a third or fourth language that is being learned in school would at the very least open the children to more resources at their disposal and potentially allow for a child to blend the separate languages or cultures in order to gain a deeper understanding of their learning as a whole. So, the devised intervention that was taking place, the children would choose their language or languages to study. Many children chose two. We looked at the 2+1 themes that are running through the West Lothian pathway to explore. So, greetings, numbers, and colours was term 1, highlighted in blue. Food, weather, and human body was term 2, in green. And clothes and personal information was term 3, highlighted in yellow. We also peppered songs and different texts and learning about the cultural aspects of Europe as well when we went through. Learning coincided in term 3 with the 2022 Euro quiz, where I had many children who showed an interest in taking part in the quiz, and one of the members of the team came from my class, as we shared with another primary 6 class, and the independent learning that they had done throughout terms 1 and 2 actually set them up for success in term 3, and they did incredibly well during the heats and getting on to the semi-finals. They did incredibly well, and we were very proud of them. We also had an interdisciplinary learning topic in term 3, which was the Eurovision Song Contest. In my previous placement in the 5-4 class, we had done a 3-week topic about Eurovision at the time, and this was incredibly successful along with the digital literacy. So I was very much wanting to bring this back and see how it would work in with this new independent language learning. We also set an overall goal context for the class in that they were going to create resources for the children in primary 1 and primary 2. So these were primary 6's buddies, and the primary 5s were making for the nursery children who were going to be the new intake to primary 1. And we also had to look at the digital media that we wanted to use. So Duolingo was very, very popular. So is Language Nut, which is used throughout West Lothian. Both offer very different styles within a digital learning context, which was very good for the children to have that choice. And then we also had continued use of generated Google websites, which I created. The children also had use of their mobile phones, which were really handy when there was a shortage of laptops sometimes. And it just meant that the children could keep on using these digital medias irrespective of what was going on in the wider school context. I also took the opportunity to be a learner and choose a high currency language for myself, which was Gaelic. The course content followed the same themes as the 2+1 pathways, and they also explored aspects of Scottish Gaelic history and culture. I was taught by a native speaker over 8 weekly sessions in a group of 10. It was very important that I took the onus of being a new language learner myself, so that I could be able to link with my own children's experiences within the classroom doing a language that perhaps would be more independent. So for my own records, I categorised the children by language as primary, secondary or tertiary based on the number of children in this language group, this community that they were building for themselves. It should be noted here that many of the children flocked to previously disliked languages, French and Spanish, or heritage languages such as Italian, French, Welsh, Polish, as well, as these languages are considered safe and familiar, or they already have a very high currency values anyway, so that it would almost be silly not to pick it in the child's point of view. Korean had actually had a very high value in class, while Squid Game was popular on Netflix during term 1, but it very quickly lost its value when the children were hit with the difficulties in learning a new set of phonemes that have no similarity to previously learned ones in languages that they already know, which in my opinion is very unfortunate, as Korean has a very user-friendly writing system, but of course we cannot learn languages independently, writing from speaking. Everything has to conglomerate together, and because the children were met with this and felt that they could not overcome that, they decided to take a step back, and then they found better success with other languages. Russian was also a language that was chosen by one of the children, and this was later abandoned in term 3 due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict that broke out. So the pupils worked in a 3-week cycle for each theme or topic that we discussed earlier. So there was a vocabulary search where each child has their own jotter for recording vocab in their chosen languages. The pupils would focus on the accurate writing of the vocab, and some of them would write an additional phonetic key in order to aid pronunciation for some words that they might have otherwise struggled with. Pupils were also encouraged to observe the linguistic or grammatical rules of their target language if they came across them, and write these down as well for future reference. Research is an incredibly important independent skill that pupils working in second level should be developing, and I feel that this taking a week to just do that very much set them up for success in the later weeks of the cycle. Their next part of the cycle was tasks, so they were creative or hands-on as much as possible, with the aim to encourage the pupils to engage with the learning they'd done in the previous week, and also to just enjoy working with a different language. And this is also an opportunity for me to pop in and scaffold where appropriate. A majority of my support was assisting in finding information where children maybe weren't sure how to go about researching a certain topic. I was there to help advise them with how to go about researching something, and then being able to take a step back and watch them use that new information and support in order to set themselves up and be successful in their task. And then finally, our last week, we would cascade our learning, usually through games where possible. The pupils would feed back to the class or to their learner group about what they just learnt through those time slots, and they would share their learning up on the two boards that we had both inside and outside the classroom for what they've completed during their task phase. So they would either teach a word or a phrase to their peers usually, or they would speak to me. I would engage them in a learning conversation as well. And there were the working walls were dedicated to their learning, and pupils could independently build a showcase of their own learning. They were also encouraged to complete modern language tasks on their monthly homework grids, which I shared with them on Teams. So here are a few examples of the vocabulary search. You can see we have a Spanish learner who's popped in some phonetics to help him with some of his pronunciation, and a little bit down about gendered language. We have a Polish learner, and we have a Japanese learner who's also written down hiragana where possible to help aid with their reading of Japanese. We have some Italian, and the Italian learner's written down some phrases that he might use if he was going back to Italy on holiday. And we have a German learner who is collecting numbers and colours to help them with a later task. Some examples of tasks: we did some greetings and had a look at flags. Some restaurant menus that we used to create for food. The Portuguese menu also had a little piece of information about the cultural aspect in Portugal with regards to when shops and restaurants would be open and when they would be shut during the day. And as you can see, the children had a great time looking through and making their restaurants as individual as possible. This was a weather system. The German weather strip was based on an example that I gave them. Sometimes I would offer them a scaffolded example of, this is the kind of thing we would expect to see. As you can see, they had days of the week, they have some weather words, and then they have a translation underneath. But I also gave the children the freedom to go off and do what they wanted to do. As you can see, the Japanese learner's gone for a little bee theme with some different picture sizes there and shapes, and the German and the Italian learners have created a map instead to focus the weather words, and they've made them interactive as well. All of these were blue tacked onto the board so they could also move things around as they discovered what the weather was doing in those different countries at that time. This is an example of the human skeleton that we did. This was a lot trickier for some as it involved quite a bit of cutting and sticking, a lot of fine motor skills. And we also used head, shoulders, knees and toes and researched different variants of Simon Says in order to cascade that learning a bit further. So this is a couple examples of the cascades. Both boards were built by the children. They helped to paper and put the borders up. They also took full responsibility for putting their work up on the board. So where you see where it's placed is where it ends up. I said to them, I'm not going to touch it. everything that you put on is where it's going to end up. So you can see where they've built up how they wanted their boards to look. And these are examples of the books that they created for their buddies down the school, and a few examples on a wee list that we co-created of the kinds of things that they would want to have in them and how they would use them when they took them down at the end of the school year. So I asked the pupils in my class to complete a Microsoft form prior to and after the intervention period to see their honest and anonymous opinion of modern languages. So while the number on the left, which was in October, 3.2 out of 5, is actually a very respectable number and doesn't quite reflect their vocal distaste that they had during the period before we set up the intervention. It is clear that in their eyes there was a tangible improvement going up to 4.6 out of 5. So there was very much an improvement in the learning that they were doing, and it was clear from what I could see that they were enjoying it. So here we have some of the statements that they made during the first and second teams form. So there were fun activities. If they could go to a different country, they'd be able to speak to different language. Every time that you start learning a modern language, you'll learn something new. So they enjoyed doing something new. In red, we have some of the things that they found hindered their modern languages and their enjoyment, and saying it's very frustrating to keep going and that there's a lot of hard work to do, and that there was not much real life modern language games that you could play with other people. They felt very much segregated in their language learning groups. As much as we tried to create a crossover during the cascade, sometimes that was just not possible. And in blue, we've got some suggestions that the children wanted, such as outdoor activities and some artwork. And I think you'll agree, artwork certainly happened. Outdoor activities, not quite so much, unfortunately. So what was the impact on the class? Well, they had much higher confidence and motivation. They were actually excited to see modern languages on the agenda for the day towards the end of the academic year. They were excited to work with each other and share their learning. I observed longer focus periods during their task time and their vocab research, and their work was of a much higher quality. The children were actually proud to work longer on that piece and then put it up for the whole school to see. And they also had the freedom to study how they liked in a manner that worked for them at the ability level that they needed. So for example, I had a child who was learning Arabic. He was less interested in the more traditional creating a menu, creating a weather wall. He was quite happy to sit with more digital media and created a PowerPoint instead, which was his way of showing his own learning in a way that I would see that he had been working very, very hard on learning Arabic, and he also enjoyed the gamification aspect of using Duolingo and Language Nut, so that was fine. And the impact on myself as a practitioner, I furthered my pedagogical knowledge of 2+1 curriculum. I had the opportunity to create and revise a teaching cycle that worked for my class in a way that they wanted. I observed a much, much calmer atmosphere. And when there was a little bit of chaos, it was the kind you could sit back and enjoy because you knew the kids were actually in their element. They were fully enjoying this and on board with the tasks that they were doing. And I found, as a probationer, the workload was much more manageable. I was able to take that advisory support role in helping the children to help themselves, and in having that predictable 3-week routine, I was able to give them that theme, the basic expectations, and then just send them off to learn confident in the knowledge that they would come back with something new and extraordinary every single time. So going forward, I can see so much potential for this aspect of modern languages. It won't necessarily spark an overhaul of the curriculum, but it's really great potential to build up young learners in a way that feels organic to them. So for example, my 5/6s have become 6/7s. They're going to teach their buddies the chosen language that they've learned and support them in French, which is the early level / first level language of choice in that school. The pupils can widen their cascade to other classes. That could be modelling that 3-week cycle, planning and leading language celebrations in school, using social media, creating and sharing resources, not just within their school, but within the West Lothian cluster as well. Modern language learning could also become a long-term homework project while continuing 2+1 learning in school. So their chosen language that they have high motivation for, high currency, say for example Polish, could be done at home, and then this could culminate in a class talk or an inter-school project across the local clusters, while they're still learning that 2+1, in this case French and Spanish, in school. So that way there is no feeling of missing out on something. And the children also highlighted, as I've said previously, that they wanted more outdoor opportunities, more real life situations like role play to use their learning. And I'm thinking that this could be done through excursions, school connections, or being able to work with native speakers as and when the opportunity arises. So I welcome your questions, your comments, and your feedback on this inquiry. I've been thinking of my next line of inquiry in this vein, and I'm very much look forward to seeing where it will go next. So thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.